Namaskara and welcome to BIC Talks, a podcast brought to you by Bangalore International Centre, where we present conversations that move, inform, and encourage discourse.
'74th is useful to get court stays. Very useful. So its biggest purpose really is to keep using it. The 74th is an absolutely worthless, useless amendment. And I'm saying it with all responsibility of someone who has worked in the system for 24 years. It has 18 items. First thing is it covers municipality, which is BBMP. Doesn't recognize parastatals and all that in the first place. You list 18 functions about what it means to live in a city, and transport is not one of them. 18 you list, and you don't think transport is a function which is relevant for a city. You don't list urban commons, which is why our public spaces are shrinking. And the 74th, we need way beyond a planning committee. You need an MPC plus, the Metropolitan Planning Committee plus, because planning per se is useless sans the proper implementation. And the reality of Bangalore is, from 1985, as he mentioned, the master plan and the CDPs, and the last one of 2007, we are in this mess partly because of that journey. And we still think that the next CDP is the answer. It's amazing. There's a saying, when you're in a hole, the first thing you stop doing is to dig further, because you're going to go further in the hole. You got to start thinking, how do I come out of this hole? All that we are doing, CDP has some religious thing and figuring out which color needs to be painted for what, and we want to do one more cycle of that. When are we going to learn and wake up and smell the coffee? We are totally in la la land.
As India's cities rapidly expand, the challenges of governing urban spaces become ever more complex. This episode delves into key aspects of India's urbanization: land management, infrastructure development, environmental sustainability, and the balance between policy and practice. It will delve into questions around power sharing in urban governance, the role of cities in shaping societal and economic futures, and the pathways to creating livable, sustainable urban spaces for the next generation. Dr. A. Ravindra, former bureaucrat and author of Governing Urban India, together with V. Ravichander, urban expert and self-proclaimed patron of lost causes, discuss perspectives on reforming governance structures and reimagining Bengaluru's governance model. The session will be moderated by Meera K. from Citizen Matters. This episode is adapted from an event that took place in the Bangalore International Centre in September of 2024.
Cities, by definition, we all know every city in India, every part of India is pretty much going through the same pain points. Bangalore is probably more painful than some other cities, but it's all there's nothing new, right? And we've been talking about these issues for, ever and ever. If you look at the paper, it feels like deja vu sometimes, right? July, I saw there was a headline in July, right? Bangalore gets Raste Gundi Gamana app to report potholes in the city. And then it was the same time, there was another announcement for 17 new elevated roads. You kind of tend to forget, was it 2024 or was it 2018 or whatever, right? Things kind of repeat and with regular frequency. In fact, in the time that BMTC is taken to develop a intelligent transport app, Apple has moved from iPhone 6 to iPhone 16. So pretty much a lot of things are going on and on and on. So we know the issues. We kind of, in a way, I think, resigned to it. In fact, today when I was when BSc Darvikram had reached out to ask me to moderate, I was wondering, racking my brain, what is it that, we would learn something new here? So one of the things is, yes, we're all familiar with the issues, but there's a lot of inside stories and understanding and, the story behind the story kind of things that somebody with such a great long career would have to share. So I'm hoping today between Ravi and Dr. Ravindra, we will hear many of those old stories and what has worked, what has not, and the intricacies of many of those earlier developments, which will help understand and figure out how do we not let it repeat. I'm hoping that is what we will hear today. So with that, I want to just dive into my fundamental question. I really want to understand this political system, and today I'm going to wear the hat of a very typical person, not say okay, it's. I think there's too much of this expectation and burden on citizens saying, oh, we should be involved, we should actually get actively engaged and start fixing things. All that is true. I keep harping on that in normal days, but today I just want to wear the hat of an average person and say, we want the government to work. This is our expectation, and why the hell is it not happening? So I really want to understand the, sort of the background, saying typically every city, and specifically Bangalore, we don't have master plan guiding the development. We don't have an elected body. There's very little finance, and the corporations are not self-sufficient. It's going on, and typically the whole, it's a political problem, right? And governing is kind of set as it's a set of projects or a series of tenders and contracts and work orders. So why is this happening, and what is it? And behind all this is the whole political system, the politicians, the bureaucrats. What is there in their mind? Why are they doing this? Very fundamental question I'd like to pose to both of you.
Well, as I said, the three of us have been discussing, debating urban issues, and particularly Bengaluru issues for a long, long time. So the obvious question is why some things have remained the same over the years. For instance, started by referring to potholes. Potholes was there, 20, 30, 40 years when I served in the corporation. I tried to fix them, but the potholes continue to be there even today. Although with developed technology, this is the difference. Those days we didn't have the kind of technology that we have today. So if you ask what's the difference between, let us say, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years ago, I would say in Bangalore, it is perhaps, like what Charles Dickens said, it's the best of times and the worst of times. So the best is, it has grown as a great IT city, technology city. It's a startup capital, and anything new in the IT technology sector, Bangalore, catches up. So Bangalore's economic growth is good. It stands number one so far as economic growth is concerned. Even according to the Ministry of Urban Affairs, the index they prepared for the last 2 years. While in municipal progress or performance index, Bengaluru doesn't figure in the first 10 or even probably very, very much low down. Whereas they have another index called ease of living index. There it tops, number one. But I was a bit confused because ease of living is certainly not something that characterizes Bangalore in many ways, but they interpret it differently. Especially, they go by economic growth. So far as economy is concerned, yes, investors come in and all that, and maybe, if you pose questions to them, they'll say, yes, it is number one. It is number one in human resource, technology, in a number of things, institutions it has, and all that. But as I said, in municipal performance, which is basically maintenance of roads and infrastructure, transport and water supply, power supply, and all these things, then it's nowhere still. So it is puzzling, as you said, why is this happening? And that is the fundamental question I have posed. In fact, my basic question that I raised was, why is it that India in general, because all cities, we have these problems. And in Bangalore in particular, where we have made great strides in science and technology, we have best of scientists, technologists, etc. We are not able to manage cities well. So, see, we have the best of managers. In the sense, Indian have become managers of international organizations like Microsoft and all that. Here also, scientists, technologists, managers, but we are not able to manage cities well. It is still confused. So why? So instead of beating about this, a lot of issues I have discussed, what are all the things. But my fundamental question that I have also posed is, who governs our cities? And how are the cities governed? So governance is the key question. So whether it is failure in infrastructure or supplies, municipal supplies, etc., or even the big wigs and IT people not coming about complaining with their own kind of complaints. See, we seem to be failing in governance. So I have said clearly there is a governance failure. And behind this, these are the two questions to be answered. It is not merely having, let us say you have the necessary funds, the people, etc. You may know how. You know what is known, what are all the issues, and perhaps how they should be tackled. Also, so many views from Ravi's report earlier on that governance restructuring report that gives you all those things. But the more important question is who is governing. So unless you answer, that is the question she was raising in a way, politics. So the fundamental question again is that it's not, we should know that city politics is very important. We are ignoring that. I think you want to.
No, I just want to kind of get into the next level.
Yeah.
If you can explain, like in your law career, you've seen politicians, you've been part of the system, you've seen the officials. What is in their mind?
I can't say what is in their mind. I'm not a futurologist or psychologist to say, but I can tell you what is happening in my own experience. See, basically, politicians look at problems in general and whatever issues they face, and city governance in particular, I have felt in a very different framework from how we look at it. For them, you see, number one, you must remember each of them gets elected for 5 years, and sometimes they don't stay for 5 years. Now, for instance, city of Bangalore itself now, there will be no elected body for the past 4 years, I think, almost. So, you see, you'll have to distinguish again between politicians at the local level, the state level, and the central level. I'll give you an interesting, my own experience. The first time I was in Bangalore City Corporation, then it was called, in the late 80s. See, I had the experience of working in BBMP in the 80s and the 90s as well. See, elected councillors, but that used to be full term and things like that. And see, those who were municipal councillors at that time, when I was commissioner first time, later became MLA, members of the Legislative Assembly. Earlier in the council, they used to attack the government, state government, you are not releasing, you are not doing this for the city. And now, after having become MLAs, they themselves are not showing the same interest because there you wield a different kind of power. So that's the most important thing to know is that we all talk about decentralization, empowerment of local bodies, ward committees. It's not happening because at the state level, the politicians, they are unwilling to part with power. So even today, cities, the power of, many things in giving sanctions and taking major decisions. Say, for instance, you mentioned about master plan. Master plan, which was prepared in 2007, up to 2015, it went to government long ago, that has not been approved, for their own reasons. So it has to go to the government for approval. Although there is a city planning authority, VDA is the planning authority, statutorily they can sanction. But in practice also, this is what's happening. So reluctance to part with power at whatever stage you are. The same things that can be said about central government. That will come to federalism, issues of state-center relations and all that. So this is what is happening. They look at it from their own interest. What do I get from the city or the thing? Today, the power in cities essentially pertains to land. I will come to that later if you want. But briefly, this is the picture.
Ravi, you want to add, is it a lack of vision? Is it?
No, so I'll tell you two things. One, of course, who owns the city, who's in charge. I've said this even before, but it's worth repeating because some may not have heard it. The reality is we have a constitutional defect at the birth of the constitution. While the center and state roles were clearly defined as tier 1 and tier 2 of government with concurrent list and state list and central list, unfortunately, when it came to the third tier, which is the city government or the local rural government, whatever, unfortunately, they use the word it's a local body. So they didn't have the courage to go and define the third tier of city government or any kind of government. Yes, which is unfortunate, given that whether it was Bose, Nehru, Rajaji, all of them cut their teeth in city government before going to national politics. So you had a leadership which actually came from the city into national, but when it came to the constitution, they were okay with one person, one vote, but somewhere they stopped shy of saying that there is a third tier with legislative powers and running the third tier of government. And we are still paying a price for it after all these years. I mean, just a point. To your question on politicians, the way I look at it is as follows. See, when you get elected with fishing rights. I call it as fishing rights to a pond. So you get fishing rights. Think of Bangalore, since we are talking about this city. Think of it that you have got fishing rights for this pond. And what is now happening when you have fishing rights? Consequent set of people prefer to fish in this pond, which has become extremely toxic. And we continue to try to fish in a pond that is very toxic. Now, normally, as a private sector guy, when I have a market which is a pond, I will think about how to make the pond into a lake. How do I make the lake into a river? I will still have fishing scope, but I'm now fishing in a larger lake for starters and subsequently in river. So if I take the analogy of that, the question is the political class development is really about converting that toxic pond towards a lake and towards a river. The reason why it does not happen is that the worst, because given that power goes from one party to another every 5 years, the worst thing that can happen is I do the right things by the long term and you, my opponent, get to fish. So I would rather leave a toxic pond for you to continue fishing. So collectively, the political class is not taking the interest which is in the long term. Very crudely, if I can say, if you take China as an example, because we keep saying China, what China has really done is gone from pond to lake to river. The reason they did it is the Communist Party was in control politically through the entire process. So they are now fishing in the river. So because it was the same party, it is happening, while in our case, we tend to take short term. So that is one problem. A lot of it can really be tied, I mean, we'll come to land other things, is to this issue of fishing. We should not be in denial. I mean, in the past, there have been talk about so much percentage and all that stuff. It's a reality. So we should not kid ourselves that when you see a project worth 500 crores, you can be sure that 250 crores is gone. And the remaining 250 crores is not necessarily wisely spent. So these are live problems. And therefore, it is not rocket science to build roads without potholes, which don't develop potholes. But there is a business in potholes. You know, the National Highway has a defect liability period of 5 years. And they have actually an automated system that if a fault appears, they just deduct from the contractor, no questions asked. It's just deducted, which is why you find that is in better shape. But we don't, because for us, the pothole is part of the overall fishing rights model. So to my mind, the crux really is, as you rightly said, we know we have been talking about the same problems, same issues. The key is how do we break this logjam? You know, because you talk about governance. I've worked on governance in official committees for 6-7 years. It's a yawn. It's a yawn for citizens. They yawn for the political class. They say, "Bore mat karo." I mean, bad ye governance, etc. So the point really is there is no constituency or market. Even the latest. I mean, we have worked and given on a bill. We can talk later about a tale of two bills. There is a bill in the assembly which is at total variance with the bill that the committee has done. While I recognize the government's right, I recognize their right to table a bill that they deem fit because they are the elected leaders, but without even a by your leave as to why these suggestions are a thing, it's quite obvious why this is not accepted and why that is accepted or what they have tabled. And this is part of the problem, Meera.
So that's exactly my question, saying what is it that mindset that wants to just keep it a pond all through and not really expand, which is why I was asking what mindset. Really how do you change that?
I can exemplify what he has said, fishing pond. by my own experience. I mean, let us take, he also mentioned about roads. It is no-brainer. I mean, you can certainly improve the quality of roads. My own experience in trying to do this, I'll tell you. So when I was administrator, I was both administrator at one time and commissioner in the city corporation, maybe in the mid-90s or so. Then as soon as I assumed charge, I found roads in such a bad condition that something had to be done. And I found that, with the earlier tenders and all that, it's only the local contractors will come and it is all fishing sharing of the fishing rights and things like that. So I thought I'll first try to build some roads on a scientific basis. So for the first time, we engaged some consultants who were, really very good technical consultants, and they did pro bono. So we developed, very good standards and norms for laying the roads and all that. Then we advertised and calling for it. When the tenders came in, so I found very good contractors applied, and then we wanted to finalize and then issue the orders. Then at the last minute, there is again from the state government, he got a call saying that here or the councillors, who are ex-councillors or politicians, let us say, they began a campaign against me saying that this is all getting delayed because roads are becoming very bad. You must have. So they didn't want those good contractors to be there because they found that none of the local contractors qualified. So that was the sharing thing. So I had to postpone that one. I'll just finish the story. When I again went as commissioner later, I again took up this, and I thought I'm wiser by experience. Some similar exercises carried, but then the real problem those days was lack of funds. From the government, we were not getting these grants and all that. So I went in for the first time municipal bonds. He knows that. So that's the first time in India. So we mobilized more than 100 crores and what. We succeeded in it. There again, the more interesting thing was when we called for tenders, and I finally see they all ganged up, and there was no response at all.
And
I'll
I just want to quickly share in the roads the tender show example with which I was very closely associated. So the whole idea of tender show was you build a road around the pedestrian, you build life cycle and all good things basically. And when we put it out to bid initially, nobody bid. And being a researcher, I went and met L&T. I met about 5-6 of the big companies and saying, look, this is a new age road. It is this thing. Why are you guys not bidding? So they gave, if I remember right from memory, 5 reasons why they don't wish to bid.
Yeah.
Reason number 1, they said the corporator will not allow me to work on the road. They will interfere until I this thing. Second, they said that you believe that BBMP, BWSSB, BESCOM can be made to work together to give you one common plan and road. Never going to happen. It's a pipe dream. That's second reason. Third reason, we don't foresee competent people across the table with whom we can discuss and get this thing done. Fourth, we have zero confidence that our bills will get paid without commissions of a pretty high order. And it goes on. Therefore, we actually then set up an empowered committee with the chief secretary, finance secretary, etc. Said we will ring fence this project. We will ring fence this project in a manner that the first set of 7 roads can happen without all these 4 or 5 infirmities. And that is how TenderSure as a project became possible, because you had to do that to get through the road. Subsequently, of course, now TenderSure has become mainstream for one simple reason. It is not because they care for pedestrian. The cost of a TenderSure road is higher because it's got utilities and other things. And projects and higher project size we really love, because how to take money out of projects is an art and a science. And that happens all the time.
Thanks, Ravi. I'll come to the funds question, but just to take off on this comment, you talked about the constitution, talking about local bodies, right? Very simplistic approach, but, and this is, if we just renamed it as city governments, instead of calling it local bodies or palike or any of the other terms, do you think it would make a difference? Because I think the problem is also in citizens' mindsets. All of us think of it as a service delivery body rather than this is an arm of the government that is closest to us. So,
But what is the arm that is closest to you? The elected body is BBMP.
yeah.
And BBMP is less than 20-25% of my life. Water supply, sewerage, outside BBMP. Electricity, outside BBMP. Bus transport, outside. Metro transport, outside. So what is this BBMP animal that we keep saying is local government? It's a sham. See, a true local government needs to have all the civic thing in a truest sense under it. We have nothing resembling it. What is happening really is, we are all being told, look at that, look at that. We are all being distracted with various things without going to the essence of what does it mean to be a citizen and live in a city where services can be provided. We have nothing resembling that. BBMP is not local government. Though you have an election to that body, it does not represent 80% of what you face in the city.
Yeah, absolutely. Just let me expand on that and give my own experience. See, this was well known. We had been discussing and all that. So later, after retirement, I was for some time advisor to the chief. In that capacity, we prepared a metropolitan governance bill. There was a big committee and all that. There, we brought in all this. All bodies to be under the umbrella of the elected body, maybe BBMP, whatever you may call it. And so more important than that, at the city level, city government, as you said, you need a political executive which is empowered. See, today, there's no political executive as such. Mayor has no powers. They say commissioner has all powers under the act, but still some committees and all, informally, a lot of power gets vested in them. So the conflict goes on. So we try to rationalize everything and put in place a good governance bill, which took care of all this coordination and financing and all those things. And then, when it was taken to the chief minister, because I was close, and he said, it is good, you bring it up to the cabinet. So I took this to the cabinet. The cabinet, naturally some ministers, especially from Bangalore, I won't name them, they started murmuring and asking. I said, then they said, okay, we want to know the deal, make a presentation. I made not 1, 2, 3, 4 presentations before the cabinet subcommittee they had set up. And after that was the end of it, because they never wanted to take it up. See, this is about the answer, real short answer to your question.
So that's true. I mean, as in right from this committee to Kasturirangan committee to your restructuring.
Including examples of what is happening. Even if you take today, you have a bill in the assembly. Even I also blame finally even citizens at the end of the day.
Also.
If you take BBMP Act 2020 or the current bill which is there, I'm just talking about ward committee and citizen participation, which is the holy grail of the ultimate fix. That the current bill is the same 2020, which is nominated committee and all that stuff. Our bill is extremely strong on what should be the ward committee function, how it should be constituted, and all kinds of empowerment. Nobody has shown any interest. Neither civil society has shown interest in this whole, that there is a government committee bill which says that. And the politicians are clearly said we are not interested in it. They just want to perpetuate the existing system on citizen participation. So the point I'm really trying to make is, even when you have an option on the table, there is no pressure from anybody that why are we not considering it. I'm not saying our committee bill is perfect, but there is zero pressure from the ground that this is better than that. I hope you get what I'm saying. There is a bill which has been made by a government appointed committee, not some random thing. There is a bill tabled in the assembly. And I'm saying examine the two, but still don't want to do it. So we have many, many problems to fix. My own view is more than citizen participation. I really think that citizens need to be more informed. If we can get more and more citizens to think about it, think about this issue, think about this announcement, slowly I think there'll be a mind shift change where there's a better appreciation of how we are being taken for a ride. And what Calcutta has shown, that collectively when a break point comes, that is of course what happened there is really totally reprehensible and can understand it. But you need moments like that needs to come on city issues, which says no more. Till we reach that point, we are going to be continue to be taken for a ride.
So let's take that gap. So I agree. Like, see, over years, we've seen Bangalore civic groups have actually been talking about decentralization, empowered mayor. It is reasonably sort of a common a concept that many people do know about. Yet, like you're saying, there's not enough pressure to actually make it happen. But
how many of them have sought a meeting with the legislative subcommittee to say, I don't like your ward committee in your bill? How many of them have done it?
I think that maybe we should ask that question when we open up a Q&A.
We are talking. PowerPoint slides, everything looking perfect. But on the ground, it's just the reverse. That's really the point I'm trying to make.
Okay, we'll come to that question, but I was just thinking, in a way, this reflects the challenges that you can see in federalism, right? When the center actually has a problem like delegating power to the states kind of speak up. And there is noise. And there is a lot of citizen sort of support for that, because there's this identity of states, right? It becomes like a competing thing saying, okay, you are, discriminating against the South or against this state or that state. Is the issue that cities don't have that kind of an identity, the sense of ownership? And do you think that's something to...
there are two things. It's an important question in a way. Does the city have an identity? You see, now, for instance, Calcutta, what is happening now, Calcutta has a more, kind of a better identity of the city amongst the citizens than Bangalore, I would say. Bangalore we say it is a cosmopolitan city, but it is also desperate. Different types of people coming from different states, they hardly are able to come together. The only group of citizens who come together in Bangalore, I find, is only when there are some issues like in the language, Kannada, because they have as Kannada Chaluvaligars or whatever it is. So there is a very clear identity. Similarly, for instance, which can talk about this, when it comes to caste, then there is an identity, there is a big movement, etc. See, in what happened in Calcutta now, that became so big because it's more an emotional issue. When emotional issues come up, citizens do join, at least that kind of a group. So what is happening in Calcutta is the doctors who joined together. More than people have supported it, yes. But they are not letting it go.
Every day there's a death because of potholes and somebody taking a deviation.
So this is
but it is not moving the city. It is not moving the needle. It has become normalized.
So if citizens have to come together, see, there are two things. One, as Ravi said, they need to be better informed. They also need to be better motivated and have a passion for the city. See, if I have a passion for the city, I tell you do something, citizen matters, he does something. See, each of us, there are so many, that way in Bangalore, so many groups, they know, each one wants to do something, but we are not able to come together. That's what I have been saying. I tell people also, we need to create a pressure group. Unless we create a pressure group and go and meet, maybe stage dharana, I said, if you want, I will lead so many times.
And Meera, and also this identity, as Dr. Ravindra rightly said, language is a big marker. So when we go into who is a Bangalorean, etc., we will get down this language issue. I think the relevant question is what makes a Bangalorean. To me, what makes and that's partly because my Kannada is not strong enough. Artha agata, but Mata the Bala Kashta. So therefore, I have to twist the whole question framing itself to my advantage. Therefore, I feel the relevant question is what makes a person a Bangalorean, as opposed to who is a Bangalorean, because who is a Bangalorean will get us into a different kind of debate. And that is really not helpful. But what makes a Bangalorean then brings into, have you been part of your RWA? Have you helped out in this? Have you did something else? You then start moving the conversation as to what makes a person that city dweller, as opposed to the who question, just as an identity point.
Yeah, I think that's something there's got to be a lot of work needs to be done in that space. That seems to be a
maybe Citizen Matters should run a whole series on what makes a Bangalorean and how is that different from who is a Bangalorean.
There will be a lot of differences there. Yeah, okay.
Thank you. But let me come back to the funds question, right? So this is a city which is like milk for what it's worth. Everybody at the state level is actually looking to Bangalore for revenues. And yet, as the local body or the city government actually has very little funds. It's not self-reliant. It's always dependent on handouts to the state. How do you actually change this? What strategies? Of course, some of it has been addressed in the various bills that have come up. But in general, for the long term, what strategies should we take up to say, okay, we have the money, we'll get it done?
Now let us go back to the constitutional issues you raised and all that. So India is a federation. As I said, to begin with, the local bodies, local government, the third tier was not part of the constitution at all. So it got ignored. And another thing I'll tell you, initially, soon after independence, urban development, urban issues never got any prominence because we were overwhelmingly rural. So rural development, agriculture, that took all the attention of the central government, state governments, etc. That is one side of the story. So later, when central government was also seized of empowering the local bodies. So 74th Amendment. The first one was 73rd Amendment, which tried to empower the rural local. In fact, rural local bodies are more empowered. They have panchayats have more power than the municipalities. So 74th Amendment, which perhaps is more an afterthought of 73rd, although they said it is, they create, again, it is not a local self-government. It's again local bodies because it doesn't have recognition as a third tier of government. So they only amended it and said it is for the state, they empowered the state government. It is for the state governments to empower the urban local bodies or municipalities. There's a word used as municipalities, as they deem fit. So again, it is left to the state governments, and they're not doing it. So now that's why I've said one of the important things I've ended with is you will have to revisit 74th Amendment. 74th Amendment, again, DPC, MP, they're all confusing. So if you want to really empower the local government, constitutional amendment is the first thing. So that then you feel more empowered and people automatically it becomes a constitutional issue.
Your question was on funds. We'll come to that. But just to finish quickly the 74th so that we can get the 74th out of the way. 74th is useful to get court stays. Very useful. So its biggest purpose really is to keep using it. The 74th is an absolutely worthless, useless amendment. And I'm saying it with all responsibility of someone who has worked in the system for 24 years. It has 18 items. First thing is it covers municipality, which is BBMP, doesn't recognize parastatals and all that in the first place. You list 18 functions about what it means to live in a city, and transport is not one of them. 18 you list, and you don't think transport is a function which is relevant for a city. You don't list urban commons, which is why our public spaces are shrinking. And the 74th, we need way beyond a planning committee. You need an MPC plus, the Metropolitan Planning Committee plus. Because planning per se is useless sans the proper implementation. And the reality of Bangalore is from 1985, as he mentioned, the master plan and the CDPs, and the last one of 2007, we are in this mess partly because of that journey. And we still think that the next CDP is the answer. It's amazing. There's a saying, when you're in a hole, the first thing you stop doing is to dig further. Because you're going to go further in the hole. You got to start thinking, how do I come out of this hole? All that we are doing, CDP as some religious thing, and figuring out which color needs to be painted for what, and we want to do one more cycle of that. When are we going to learn and wake up and smell the coffee? We are totally in la-la land in terms of this thing. Yeah.
This is pretty much true of all cities. Even though Mumbai, for example, has lots of money, Delhi gets so much attention. Do you want to just comment on what is it that there is universally in all?
So, for example, on money, we ourselves as a committee have shown that it is possible to collect twice the property tax as of today with the current system, not even raising taxes. He is the original proponent of the self-assessment scheme, and I was his Shishya who took it forward. So basically on the premise that trust the citizen to tell the truth, then expect a revenue officer to uncover a lie. That was the guiding principle. And it has been reasonably successful. But today, the reason that you're collecting less property tax is there are cozy arrangements between the tax officers and the property owners, where you declare less, pay less to the city, and there's a side deal. So that is one. The second thing is citizens are smart. At the end of the day, they know that if I pay my due share, anyway, it's a bunch of crooks running the place in their perception, right or wrong. So better I cheat the city by not giving my share than give my share and they cheat me of my fairly earned money. So you rationalize it and say that it's okay to not do what you have to do because they are anyway not using the fund. There's a serious trust deficit between government and the citizens.
And see, citizens and the state. See, it is so both are the system, let's say, existing system, and quite a number of citizens, maybe even big measures. They seem to have colluded in a way to deny, the right revenues to the local government or even others and things like that.
You had an interesting suggestion, right, to kind of demarcate around 10% of the GST or something to.
See, this is the thing. There are new sources now. See, now the GST has come, which was not there earlier. Now, GST has that way the arrangement of GST is good. I may have comment on the rates and all that. So it is there is a GST council comprising members of the central government, union finance minister chairman, and the state government, state finance ministers and all. So 50% of the GST goes to the central government, 50% to the state. But nothing comes to the local body, the local government, the city. So I had suggested that part of the GST should come to the city government. And fortunately, I found that, the economist, Mr. Vijay Kelkar, who has written the foreword, he has agreed and he has actually given a formula, being an economist. He has said, see, they get 50-50, and let them give, each of them give 1/6 of that share to the local government. That itself will make it more. See, today, the ratio of municipal revenues to GDP is less than 1%. It's hardly. So that will make it at least 1%, and every year there may be a 10% increase, which will certainly improve the revenues quite a lot. So that is one, financing part and all that. But the other question is, even with the revenues, what are you doing?
Exactly.
How are you spending?
See, GST is a good idea. It's a good idea. But how are you spending? In what direction? It's a leaky bucket into which you are collecting more money and putting it. So unless, and Meera, more than anyone else, is a proponent of open data. You talk about your experience because government is inherently opaque. They don't want to share data. You're struggling from outside to get data and put it out in the public domain. If you want to collect more money and you want to bridge the trust deficit, the government has to be a lot more open up with its data.
Absolutely.
If you want to talk quickly about your experience, it's relevant because it's linked. Otherwise, just keeping on saying more money, and more money down the drain doesn't help.
Yeah. No, the interesting thing is actually BBMP has various random websites where there is some data. So we've been in the last year, along with other organizations like Janagraha or WR, we've been looking at many of these data and analyzing it, right? For example, the cess. There is just no information. The beggary says the amount that is actually collected and amount that, according to BBMP's own numbers, only 3% is used. Remaining 7% is actually unused and is kind of returning back to the state government. So this is something that we found this in one of the data jams where we organize these jams where people come together, actually start looking at data and finding, analyzing it, crunching it and sharing their findings, right? And it's really interesting to see all these findings. There's just so much you can check.
No, on construction, there's a construction cess. Yeah. Actually, that fund has grown to 10,000 crores on paper. And it is supposed to be used to improve the lot of these migrant workers, people at construction sites, their children. It is meant for that. Nobody knows where it is. It has gone into some general khazana, treasury, kitty. Maybe Naresh has used it for the K100 program, God knows. But you collect something for a specific purpose, and then you don't ring fence it to make sure that specific purpose it is used for. And it goes into a general kitty.
No, actually, during COVID, people were trying to actually access that because that's when they need.
One side. See, where does the money go? Full. Part of it goes somewhere else. I think the most telling example of this, when the couple of years back, the Contractors Association itself complained, saying that 40% commission, whether it is 40%, 30%, whatever it is different. Or it is more, it can be less. But it was very shocking that contractors who are part of that nexus, they themselves complain. So it's all your data, what is happening to information data? So nobody knows, it's so opaque.
Dr. Ravindra, back in the early 2000 and before that, has been suggesting a local city observatory where data is kept. Naresh has been talking about a city spatial kind of a thing. None of us have made any headway. I mean, there's no shortage of ideas. In fact, I think ideas per capita out of Bangalore is more than any other city. But there is no takers.
In fact, I had set up an urban observatory.
That's exactly why we set up Open City.
So we did set up, that is as soon as this technology thing came and the digitalization and all that. But it was not taken forward, See, in my own case, what has happened mostly, although I tried to initiate a lot of reforms, I never lasted long in any post to really see its conclusion. So it has to be carried forward. See, this is the thing, Ravi's passion has to be carried forward. It has to spread to other citizens.
And also capacity. If you go into the belly of the beast, I mean, some of us have been in the belly of the beast, you won't be able to sleep at night. It's quite bare. The cupboard is bare. And I'm not even talking about corruption. I'm not talking about commitment. I'm talking about competence. I'm talking about ability to this thing. And we have this thing about, it's time to say that, for example, the Delhi model of privatization, I see Murli in the crowd. And his book also mentions it. It's time we embrace some of these kind of partnerships because they are the way forward for efficiency improvements in electricity supply, water supply. It's all possible. It's been done there. In the country, we have examples, but we don't want to adopt it.
I mentioned about governance capacity, I have written about it. So we need professionals to manage cities now. It's no more a generalist job. Generalists may come. For instance, today compared to my days, there are about a dozen senior IAS officers for city municipal corporation only, special commissioners and all that. But they also complain about the difficulty in managing the city. It's a different story.
Yeah, I understand that part. That is a capacity and the training for individual resources. You also talked about a municipal cadre. That's one aspect. But I just was remembering one instance. I was once in the ward committee for a brief period. And we were talking about why desilting and drain cleaning was not done in a particular area, a particular street. And the environmental engineer said, the joint commissioners told us this is not the scope of the health department. And the AE said, well, desilting is not in a scope, we'll only do drain cleaning. So is there a fundamental issue, it's an organizational design. This is not the structural issue that, you need a governance bill, but within the organization, there's just...
Today I'm sounding quite pessimistic. Actually, incidentally, I'm a very optimistic guy because 24 years I wake up in the morning and still try to, like Don Quixote, tilt at windmill. So I am optimistic, but today I told Meera consciously, I said, there is sometimes a time to do some plain speaking and not be in denial. Today I have actually chosen to don that role of not being in denial and do some plain speaking. So please don't get me wrong that this fellow is talking very negative. I'm one of the most positive guys and I still believe there'll be a better tomorrow, despite all evidence to the contrary.
Yeah, no, that's right. See, certainly what he says is right. We should be realistic, but at the same time, we should not lose hope. Then nothing will happen. That's why coming together, bringing together.
So I lost my train. There's something I wanted to respond to when I said about the optimist thing. What was
the
your
design
question?
of organization.
I hate to say this, but our systems are designed to fail. And the person who made it fail, no action will be taken against that person. So you'll put out a contract. All due process would have been followed. A barber will get the contract to lay the road. But the guy who got the barber in the first place is kosher because he followed something called due process. That's what I mean by saying the system is designed to fail. We have all these, one of the biggest problems in government, if I actually have to fix government, one of the first, and I keep telling this to people in the corporate sector, people who have got money, one of the best things we can do from the outside is to flood the government with RFPs on how to put out a proposal to do a road, how to put out a tender to do a road or a water this thing, because the capacity in the system to make a proper document there to invite doesn't exist. The intent is to make it fail. So, in fact, the tender show model, that is what we did. We actually said that we will give you how to tender this. And we will do this to you free of cost, but you follow your process and tender this, not that. So one of the biggest things is a positive thing that we can collectively do, that if you have an idea, actually if you can go and influence it in the right direction of what should be done through what I call as the RFP process. By making
The basic project management, like
not
how do you
project management.
No.
You see, when you tender, you call for a set of people to apply. The question is, what are you tendering for? What is the problem you're solving for, aiming to solve?
That's true.
And what is your solution set? Often we get it wrong there. See, the point really, if you look at it, it's a 3-axis. First thing is, are we planning the right thing? Second thing is the execution of that well. And are we doing it with minimum leakage? My practical view is, let's get step 1 right, that we plan the right thing. Like Naresh's K100 is the right plan. Sewage may still go into the drain because there's only that much sewage he can pick up every day and remove. So sewage is still going, but the plan is the right plan. Execution is weak. The journey to a better city is to get the right plan, improve the execution. When it comes to the corruption element, Harishchandra has to be born again. It is not going to happen.
Okay, let me-
So you live with that.
One fundamental question comes up in all this. See, for all that the citizens groups may do to improve that, see, there is a limit to it. Ultimately, the power is with the government. They must be not only empowered, but as I said, the capacity has to be improved. But in all this, I think a question he asked was, why is it no action? Nothing happens to a person who really, tendered and then is a party to the whole thing. That is mainly because in the government, whether it is the state government, local, whatever, those who are recruited, the government servants as they are called, see, there is this problem, or in a way it is well-intended provision of security. See, there's some people keep asking me, why is it nothing happens to anybody? That is because you can't take action. Yes, as the saying goes, it is difficult to get into government service, but it is more difficult to get out of it. That is because, the process of taking action, etc. Now we find so many people trapped by Lokayukta, suspended, and nothing happens to them. Later they come back. So this is a very broader question, whether we should make, the government servants really should give that much of security, or they should also say, let us on contract basis, etc. Then there will be more accountability. Today, accountability is the main thing missing.
That's
See,
correct.
who is accountable? Especially in city governance, the buck keeps going from one to the other.
Okay, thank you. You talked about partnering with groups, with private organizations and all. I'm going to bring this contentious issue of having think tanks and committees and all of that, right? So, and in his book also, he's talked about this role of non-governing elite. So, looking back over the 24 years, what do you say worked? Where does it work, and where are we should actually keep?
See, I'm a firm believer that the way out of this mess is collaboration, and more collaboration. It's with collaboration with RWAs, with civil society groups, with private sector organizations. More and more people need to collaborate, and we need an osmosis between the government and those outside of government. Those outside of government need to understand what are the constraints and what is the challenges here. Those in government need to also learn certain kind of practices and modern project management and others. I believe, honestly, notwithstanding, I've been name called from the BATF days, saying extra constitutional authority and whatever, etc. It is par for the course when you get involved that you'll be called these names. But I still believe that is the way forward. In fact, I've seen limited experiments where people have been put as interns from private. Even right now, Nudge runs a thing where 15, 20 people are put in government. At the minimum, government PPTs improve. At the minimum, by putting some of these people there, at least the PowerPoint presentation is looking better. It's a start. The point I really believe is that we need to do a lot more of this kind of cross-pollination. Expecting government to give us the city that we believe we require, not going to happen. At least not in our lifetime.
Yeah.
Meera, you're young, but not in our lifetime. It's not going to happen. And it's not going to happen. And therefore, my belief is that is the way forward.
See,
and if names are called because of that kind of collaboration, so be it. But that's the way forward.
Yeah, just a minute. So, in fact, I have spoken about collaborative governance. That should be the future. In fact, in another book of mine, I have expanded on it, on governing the state, where the state, the market, and the society. See, when they say market, private sector, etc., society is the civil. So, we have to establish it as a system, give it some kind of a shape, and say that all the three have to collaborate. It's not merely imposing. One state imposing, nobody will relish. At the same time, citizens just shouting and not going to the government, that also doesn't work. So how do we make, this is the final question, how do these three entities collaborate, not just cooperate, but collaborate with some kind of powers, etc. I mean, that is a matter for discussion.
This Bazaar, Samaj, Sarkar.
Yeah, whatever it is.
You have been listening to BIC Talks by Bangalore International Centre. If you like what you heard, do follow us on social media. Keep up with our programming by signing up for our mailer on the website or leave us a review or rating on Apple Podcasts or iTunes. The crew that makes these podcasts possible is Gaurav Krishna and Ishan Gupta on sound supervision and production, with support from S. Sarunaraj and Raghu Tenkaila. Artwork is designed by Chandni Venkataraman of Crisscross Design Studio. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel on your favorite podcast platform. It can also be accessed on our website, bangaloreinternationalcentre.org. This is Lekha Naidu signing off on behalf of everyone at BIC.